intelligence, will you recommend the Job Guide 360 interview guide to prospective job seekers?
Sure, I will. The guide is detailed and very comprehensive.
Welcome back to the deep dive. You give us the sources, we pull out the key intelligence, and basically give you the essential shortcut to being well-informed. Today, we're diving straight into financial planning, specifically a really crucial role, the retirement plan specialist. Our mission here is to speed up your understanding of the essential skills, the knowledge needed for this RPS role. We're doing that by dissecting a career guide from the Kaplan Community Career Center. We're looking at basically the 6 core competency questions that really define what makes someone successful in this area.
And this is, it's a deep dive with pretty serious implications for anyone in finance, really.
Yeah.
The source material, it really hammers home that getting the right specialist is just crucial, not just for, the guidance itself, but for giving clients, employees too, that genuine peace of mind. It's a role that needs this blend of technical know-how, being really aware of the industry, and frankly, strong interpersonal skills. It's quite a mix.
Absolutely. So for you listening, whether you're maybe thinking about this career or you manage a team with these specialists, or heck, you're just curious about where financial strategy meets the rules. This is really valuable stuff. We're going to unpack the technical foundation first and get into the regulatory side, the compliance aspect, and then talk about the strategic thinking and, importantly, the communication skills needed to actually do the job well.
Okay, let's unpack this then, starting right at the bottom layer, the technical breadth. What kind of experience do they actually need?
Well, what's interesting here, what the guide points out, is that an RPS can't just be like a one-trick pony. The experience they list, it really demands versatility. They've got to cover a whole spectrum of plans, 401ks, 403bs, IRAs, even defined benefit plans. That's a huge spread structurally and legally. That distinction's important, isn't it? Especially defined contribution versus defined benefit, like 401ks, IRAs. That's defined contribution, right? The employee bears the risk, directs investments, more or less. But then defined benefit plans, pensions, that's a whole different ballgame. Actuarial knowledge, liability management.
Exactly. And then there's another layer of complexity too. The specialist needs to be comfortable working on, 2 different fronts. You've got individual clients focused on their personal wealth building, and then you have large corporate accounts. That means dealing with regulatory reporting, organizational changes, things like that. It's really a dual expertise required.
Okay, so that technical depth flows straight into what the guide presents as absolutely crucial compliance. I mean, in an industry this regulated, the best strategy in the world is useless if it breaks the law, right? So how does the specialist show they're keeping up?
Yeah, this is where you really see that commitment to continuous professional education. It's just non-negotiable. They stay current, not just by, skimming headlines. They're attending industry conferences. They're in webinars regularly, subscribing to the key industry publications. It's not passive learning. It's really active engagement with regulations that are, frankly, always shifting.
And the source mentions who sets the rules they need to follow, right? It's not just general awareness.
That's right. They have to be routinely reviewing updates from the big players. The IRS and the Department of Labor, the DOL.
What's the tension there between the IRS and DOL? Do they look for different things?
That's a great point. Their roles can overlap, but they have distinct mandates, yeah. The IRS is mostly focused on the tax code, making sure the plan follows contribution limits, withdrawal rules, keeps its tax advantage status, all that. The DOL, on the other hand, is more focused on protecting the participants, the fiduciary duty aspect, making sure the plan's managed solely in the best interest of the employees. So the specialists, they're constantly juggling these 2 sets of rules to ensure everything's, fully compliant system-wide.
Okay, that constant learning, the compliance focus, that sets the technical baseline. But let's move past the rule books for a second and get into, the really high-stakes situations. Client management. We're talking about handling a client who's genuinely worried, maybe panicked, that their retirement savings just aren't enough. This is where strategy has to meet empathy, instantly.
Oh, absolutely. That's often the toughest part of the job. You're dealing with real fear, sometimes embarrassment, deep anxiety about what the future holds. And it raises that key question: how does the RPS take that client anxiety, which can feel overwhelming, and turn it into a structured plan, something actionable, something that actually calms them down? The guide outlines this pretty logical process. It's designed to build confidence.
So step 1 is figuring out the real picture, right? The diagnostic phase, getting the full scope of the issue.
Exactly. First step, the specialist has to do a really thorough analysis. That means looking at their current savings, sure, but also their projected income from everywhere. Social Security estimates included, and, this is crucial, setting a realistic estimate of their expenses in retirement. Clients often, misjudge their current spending or really underestimate future healthcare costs. You got to ground them in reality first.
Okay, grounded in reality. Then step 2 is actually presenting the plan, not just problems, but a path forward, managing expectations while offering solution.
Right. A detailed, coherent plan. A blueprint for getting back on track, essentially. And then step 3 gets into the specifics. The concrete actions the plan might involve, which are tangible instructions here. Maybe adjusting their savings rate, potentially, quite significantly, or exploring different investment strategies, maybe something to capture more growth without taking on, crazy risk. Or even advising them on exploring other income sources, phased retirement, maybe bridge jobs, things like that, to close any funding gap. It makes the fear concrete and manageable.
That whole process, analysis, plan, action leads us nicely into the next bit.
Yeah.
Demonstrating impact. It's not enough to just say, you can make a plan. A good candidate needs a strong success story, right? Something documented. That's the focus of the next skill, showing measurable results.
Yeah. The bigger picture here is that an RPS has to show they can move a client, move them from crisis or just, treading water to actual tangible improvement. The guide gives this pretty compelling example, an anecdote about a specialist who helped a client increase their retirement savings by 40% over 5 years. And this was someone who was seriously behind where they needed to be.
40% in 5 years.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant. What exactly did the specialist do? What were the mechanics of that turnaround? This is where it gets practical. Apparently, the client was only putting in like 3% of their salary, so they were missing out on the full employer match. And their investments, mostly sitting in money market accounts, way too conservative for their aging goals.
Right. So the specialist put together a customized plan, very targeted components. First, they restructured the contributions, made sure the client got the full employer match. That's like finding free money, step 1. Second, they reallocated the investments, moved them out of those super safe cash equivalents into a diversified mix, probably index funds, something growth-oriented but appropriate for their time horizon.
Yeah.
And maybe the most important part for making it stick, they set realistic milestones. They didn't just promise, 40% growth, see in 5 years. They set up yearly check-ins, gradual contribution increase goals. It made this huge task feel achievable, turning that big ambition into, a disciplined habit.
That connects perfectly to the next skill the guide highlights.
Yeah.
Proactively maximizing client benefits, especially using employer-sponsored plans. So linking that success story to the bigger picture, a really good RPS doesn't just manage the plan passively. They actively educate the client on how to squeeze every bit of value out of the tools they already have access to. So what are those key strategies? Beyond just save more, what specific resources do they need to point out?
Well, they really focus on leveraging the built-in advantages of the plan structure itself. First, like we just mentioned, maximizing employer matches. You can't say it enough. It's immediate, basically risk-free return. You have to take it. Second, making sure eligible clients use catch-up contributions.
Yeah.
That's huge for people over 50 who are maybe playing catch-up on their savings goals. And third, guiding clients to really understand and use the tax benefits. Is Roth better for them or traditional? Are there deductions they're missing? Stuff like that.
And the key thing here seems to be that it's ongoing. It's not a one-and-done consultation. A good RPS needs to regularly review the plan options, maybe the market changed, or new laws passed and suggest tweaks to keep the strategy aligned with the client's long-term goals. The plan's alive, it needs tending.
That's exactly it. The plan might be perfect today, but maybe the client changes jobs next year, or Congress passes new tax legislation. The strategy needs an immediate look over then. This sort of perpetual review cycle, that's what builds trust and keeps clients long-term.
Which brings us right to the final skill, and you could argue maybe the most vital one in this role: communication. How does the specialist bridge that massive gap between all the technical complexity, the jargon, the regulations, and making the client feel genuinely comfortable and well-informed?
Yeah, this is where the specialist becomes a kind of financial translator. It's critical.
Yeah.
The guide lays out some specific communication tactics. They all prioritize clarity over just sounding smart, recognizing that financial anxiety often comes from not understanding.
First, it says use simple, relatable language, strip out the jargon, or if you have to use a technical term, immediately explain it in plain English. Sounding like a textbook just loses people.
Second, use visual aids, charts, graphs. This is so important because abstract ideas like, say, compound interest or risk tolerance or seeing historical returns, they're really hard to grasp just from words. Visuals make performance and projections feel real, easier to absorb.
Right, makes it tangible.
Exactly. And finally, they need to back this all up. Provide clients with written summaries, maybe educational materials they can look at later on their own time. It respects the fact that taking in dense information about your life savings is, well, stressful. People need time to process it. So the main goal, really, across all 6 of these skills we've talked about, it stays the same. Make sure clients feel totally comfortable and genuinely informed about their retirement decisions. The specialist brings the expertise, sure, but the client has to feel empowered by that knowledge, not intimidated by it.
So wrapping this deep dive up, you can really see that core blend needed for the ideal retirement plan specialist. You need that deep technical knowledge, 401ks, IRAs, defined benefit plans, the whole shebang. You need rigorous compliance habits, always watching the IRS and DOL. You need strategic problem solving for when clients are anxious. And you need those empathetic communication skills, using visuals, simple language, educational backup. It's a high-touch, high-skill role. Demands emotional intelligence just as much as financial smarts, it seems.
And that actually raises a really interesting point about career paths, doesn't it? The source material, it focused heavily on the RPS, but it also listed several related jobs where this exact skill set is foundational. Things like benefits administrator, compensation consultant, even contract specialist. That ability to handle complex regulations and translate financial strategy, that's valuable across a much wider slice of the financial services world.
That really is the final takeaway, isn't it? Understanding what goes into being a great retirement plan specialist gives you this powerful lens. You see the foundational skills, strategic thinking, compliance mastery, client communication that are needed for success across the whole financial career landscape. This skill set, it isn't just about retirement planning. It's really about being an expert financial translator and a strategy architect wherever wealth and risk meet. We've given you the shortcut to those core competencies. Go use this knowledge.